Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Luxury. I'm your host, Alex Brandau, a Nashville, Tennessee-based global luxury real estate specialist and someone who is endlessly curious about the people and stories behind refined experiences. On this show, we go beyond the surface, diving deep into the craft, culture, and character behind what luxury really means today. All right, we're back with Let's Talk Luxury with a personal friend and a very exciting guest today, Carl from Black Abbey. What's good, my friend?
I'm just glad to be here.
No
glad
doubt.
for another day.
No doubt. Another day above ground. Isn't that right?
That's yes, at least for right now. Yeah, we still got a ways to go, but we're good for now.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, we're thrilled you're with us. Tell us a little bit about your background and your history as we get started about you and craft brew and Black Abbey Brewing.
Sure thing. Well, my name is Carl. I'm originally from upstate New York. Grew up in outside of Saratoga Springs, New York. Met my wife in college, and we moved to Nashville in 1999. So I've got 3 kids. Had 3 kids here, so I feel like that makes me about as local as just about anybody anymore.
You're in.
Yeah, it's local enough.
Yes.
And as far as beer goes, have always, I got into beer kind of the same way that I think a lot of people of our generation got into beer. I went to college and wanted to get drunk, and and so we drank beer because it was around and it was cheap. And then the school that I went to had a pretty significant hotel hospitality program, and they had a class called Introduction to Wine and Spirits. And so the Introduction to Wine and Spirits class happened twice a year. It was on Wednesday afternoons, and everybody called it wines. And so you got this little box with 3 wine glasses, and you'd go and sit in the lecture hall, and you'd learn all about the different kinds of wine and whatnot, and take notes. It was actually a relatively difficult class, I think, all things considered. But because my birthday falls early in the year, I took it fall semester, my senior year. And so the class was a lot smaller. And so the lecturers brought like cooler stuff, I guess, is what I've always heard. And so they did a class on beer, and they brought this guy in named Michael Jackson, who, not the singer performer, but preeminent beer critic of the time, has written many, many books about tasting and evaluating and finding beer. He had an app like Michael Jackson's Beer Explorer. He had a board game. Like, it's a fascinating guy. But I still remember, we tried Brooklyn Brown and Celis White and Sam Smith's Tatty Porter, a couple other beers, and it just absolutely changed my impression of what beer was and could be. At that point, we were drinking whatever was available. Drank a lot of Labatt. But that Sam Smith's Tatty Porter really turned a corner for me. And so, we were like, well, we should be drinking this. And so we would buy it, and pretty quickly realized that, the college budget and the interest in European craft beer, it just didn't line up. So we did what any good nerd would do. We went to the library and we took out a book about how to make beer. It was called The New Complete Guide to Homebrewing by Charlie Papazian. And then, whatever, after we graduated, my college buddies all got homebrew kits for Christmas, and we just started making beer. So I started making beer at my house in 1994, and just really got interested in it. I think, sometimes people pick up a hobby and like, I'm going to teach myself how to play clarinet. And, you go and you get a clarinet from the, used music store, and you try to make it work. And 9 times out of 10, somebody's like, whatever, move on. Or, people get really into it, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to get fancy reeds, and maybe I'll get a new music stand that has you know what I mean? And I think that very much happened to me with beer. I really got interested in it, and it was at a time when the homebrew movement was growing, as well as the craft beer movement in general. This is the time when Jim Cook and Samuel Adams when he was on the radio all the time. And you probably remember there's a beer called Pete's Wicked Ale.
Oh, yeah.
That, it became really, people got fascinated by it, and I was one of them. And so we just started making beer. And then we moved to Nashville. We lived on campus at Vanderbilt. My wife was getting her master's at Vanderbilt. And she was like, I got to study. You got to go find something to do. And so I joined a homebrew club at Bosco's, which was a brew pub in Hillsborough Village. And so I could walk from Married Student Housing over there. And the very first homebrew meeting I went to, I paid my dues to this guy named Ken Redman. He's the one who started Zahn's Brewing here in town. Yeah. I sat next to Linus Hall, who started Yazoo.
Wow.
Was talking to another guy named Steve Scoville, who started Little Harpeth Brewing here.
Right.
And then also met Karen Lassiter, who went on to be the brewer at Bosco's, and then started the beer program at Corsair Distilling. So that homebrew club really generated at least 5 commercial brewers. And so that's kind of, the homebrew club got in, we would send beer into competitions, that was sort of part of the club culture. So we started making beer and sending them into competitions and started winning medals and ribbons. And in 2000, a couple of guys who were brewing together won a silver medal in the largest homebrew competition in the world. Took place in Oakland, California that year. And at that point, we thought, all right, maybe we should start writing a business plan. Started writing a business plan in 2009, incorporated in 2011 under the title Black Abbey Brewing. Capital raise, opened the taproom in September of 2013. Our 12-year anniversary of opening the taproom is a week from yesterday. It's Sunday, the 20th.
Wow. What a
so
journey.
Yeah, that's it's just a little bit about me. I'm a Nashville transplant, but I've got three kids of various ages, all teens, lovely wife. I've just had our 29-year wedding anniversary.
So you mentioned, you touched on it, talking about the business plan, and tell us how you came up with, it's so interesting, the Black Abbey name.
Sure. So it's actually on my shirt, the monastery where Martin Luther wrote the 95 Theses. So here's where we're going to nerd out a little bit on kind of church history.
Yes.
In the Middle Ages, there was the Roman Catholic Church, right? The church was not just religion, but also government. It very much held the fabric of society together. And Martin Luther, his father was a copper miner, and he was studying to be an attorney, or he was scheduled, or he was destined to be an attorney. He was riding a horse through a thunderstorm, was nearly struck by lightning, and pledged his life to the church. He said, "Saint Anne, help me, I'll become a monk." Saint Anne was the patron saint of copper miners. He followed through, joined a monastery. His family was, certainly it's like, great, you were going to be an attorney, but now you've taken a vow of poverty. Great.
Right.
But joined a monastery and didn't necessarily agree with the way the Roman Church was administering not just religion, but also government. And so he wrote down his issues, nailed them to the castle church door in Wittenberg. There were 95 of them. Which was very common practice in that time. There were no newspapers or social media. Nobody's getting on their CNN app to see what's going on. So the way that folks would communicate was they would post things on the church door. And so Luther posted this on the church door. And what made it different was that somebody with the old Gutenberg printing press, which was brand new technology at that time, got a hold of it and made copies. And then it was all over Europe. And so the Pope got very upset, excommunicated Martin Luther, dispatched assassins to have him killed. He went into hiding. It's a long story, totally true. If you're interested at all, you should check it out. Luther, there's many, many biographies written about Martin Luther, but he ended up marrying a former nun, Catherine von Bora. And in the Middle Ages, it was the nuns who would brew, not the monks. Today, people think about monastic brewing, and it happens in monasteries. Well, for monks, not nuns, but the nuns ran the households. And so as a wedding gift, they were given the monastery where Luther wrote the 95 Theses, which was called the Black Cloister. They moved in there, changed the name to Luther House, and she brewed beer there, Catherine did, and basically financed Luther's ministry out of the monastery where he started the Protestant Reformation. So that kind of beer that Catherine would have been making in the Middle Ages wouldn't have been what we would think of as German beer now. It would have been probably brown and sort of smoky and maybe a little tart. It would have been very much like what we think of as a Belgian or an Abbey style ale. So we took the name Black Cloister, which was the name of that monastery, and put it together with Abbey Ale, and that's where the name Black Abbey comes from.
Amazing. Such a good story. My favorite story, origin story of Let's Talk Luxury. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Truly. Such a good origin story. Not only that you're that knowledgeable of it, of course you have to make the pitch with your business now, but also that intentional with it after that success, from the festivals, and then like, hey, we've got something here. So good. So good.
Yeah. And I think too that it's important for brands to have a story. Somebody asked me the other day about doing tours in the brewery, and we do tours kind of, if somebody wants to do one and wants to book it ahead of time, we'll do it. But we used to do them every Saturday all the time, 3 or 4 or 5 tours a day. And then it was 2020 and the world changed and we stopped doing them because you couldn't have people in the building. And then we just really never brought it back. And I really think part of the reason for that is that people have breweries within 10 miles of their house. Everybody's been to a brewery now. It doesn't have the same kind of novelty that it had. The stainless steel all looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
What differentiates one brewery from another is the juice and the story. And I'm really proud of both of those things as they relate to Black Abbey.
Didn't you say you shared in the pre-show that there was, when you started, there was a number, and then today's number is 10x
Oh,
or
yeah.
something like that?
Yeah. So when Black Abbey opened in 2013, we were brewery number 6 in Middle Tennessee. We delivered beer about 12 hours before Tennessee Brew Works. So Tennessee Brew Works is technically number 7, although Christian likes to argue about that. We did beat them. We did deliver it before they did.
Yes, you did.
But we were number 6. Now there's 35 just in Middle Tennessee. Nationwide, I want to say there was 2,200, give or take, breweries in the United States, and now there's just shy of 10,000 just in that 12-year span. There's literally just breweries everywhere. There's more in the United States now than there ever have been in the history of the country, which is great. It's amazing. I think it very much is a high tides float all boats situation. I'm very grateful to have a beer culture in the city. I think having Nashville be not just a music destination or not just an entertainment destination, but also food and beer and spirit destination, I think makes for a more compelling reason to visit the city, and also makes for the city residents a higher quality of life.
There's no question. And you have raving fans because of that, and raving fans across the country and the world because, we're such a destinationable global city, which is true. People don't realize that. But, even in my world, that I have clients that call me and are like, hey, I'm going to buy a flat in London. And that's not common out of Nashville, but it wasn't common, doing what you did when you did. But, clients their wants and desires drive that demand, right? And like, hey, I know Alex, I know he's going to help me and make this happen. Do I know what flat he should buy in Piccadilly Circus? No, but I do know that I have a partner that I can guide through the process, and he knows that if we're all involved, it'll be the same experience, just with that other variable in the mix. And the same true with the juice. What about tell us about something you've learned from that you didn't expect from when you started to now, maybe a misconception in the industry or about craft brewing, or
yeah, I think it's a good question, because I think beer oftentimes can it gets a reputation of being like, well, this is what people drink when they want to get trashed. And I do certainly that happens, but I think that happens like, gosh, I was listening to some song the other, Jerry Lee Lewis did a song called Drinking Wine, Spodioti. And like I believe that was mostly written for the rhyme, but the reputation of beer has been this sort of, old sad sack sitting in a bar with tears dripping off his nose into his pint glass, just, I gotta, I'm going to go to the bar and drink my cares away.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's a very Music City impression, I guess. But
yes,
but the sort of difference between the like frat party keg beers, the, macro lager moving into like the craft movement, is that, beer is really a luxury good. And the craft scene is about having something that is created intentionally to be delicious, not just necessarily, okay, as a means to an end, right? Something to be enjoyed and savored, not necessarily just something that, like I said to, I am not a coffee aficionado by any stretch, right? I drank coffee because I like the mechanics of it. Like I like having a cup of coffee in the morning while I'm reading the paper.
Yes.
But also I rely on the caffeine to wake me up. But I don't really care if I'm drinking coffee beans that were pooped out by, some strange version of ape somewhere. You know what I mean? Like I don't need it to be fancy coffee. I'm very comfortable to drink Waffle House coffee.
Yes. JFG is good for you.
It's just fine. Yes, it's fine. But, it's sort of a means to an end. And I do think that there's some times, there's a time and a place for everything. There's some times where you're like, you know what, I'm on a boat, I'm at the lake, I'm going camping, I'm at a tailgate party and whatever. If somebody's got a cold beer, I'm about a cold beer. And it doesn't have to be craft. It doesn't have to be barrel aged. It doesn't have to be anything other than, you know what, I'm having a nice time.
Yeah.
But I do think that the craft movement in general is beer builds neighborhoods. And I think if in part of, especially in Nashville, if you look around at where the craft breweries are or where they have been, Blackstone, who had their brew pub over on West End, right across from Cathedral, that neighborhood has radically changed. Tennessee Brew Works, which is down on Ewing, that neighborhood has radically changed. Jackalop's original location, which was on 8th Avenue right there by Frugal McDougal, radically changed. And even Black Abbey on Sidco Drive, our neighborhood has radically changed since we moved in there. And I think part of that is because it becomes a neighborhood hub. Your neighborhood brewery, your neighborhood pub becomes a place for folks to get together. And I think that is the nature of craft beer. It's how do we create an environment for social interaction. I say this all the time. If I could block Wi-Fi in our tap room, I think I would do it. And the reason for that is because I would much rather have somebody plop down at a table next to someone that they don't know and talk to them about anything rather than just sit there and stare at the box that has been in their pocket all day.
Which brings me back to a quick anecdotal thing. You were talking about reading the paper. I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to put it here on the record. You're reading your paper in the morning. You're not on your phone. You're still doing a physical.
I mean, I got a paper. I use real paper.
I love it. I love it. Yes. But that's a luxury. That's a luxury to sit there. Like my vision for that too, friend, has been on my list forever. I remember when I first started reading a paper, it was in a library, and they had those old cane poles, and you go in there and it was all in there, and you could take it up and you go into the library and these big things and spread it out. It's on my, gotta have it list that we end up with one of those as a pure antique at this point, but I have that connection. We're the same. We get the paper at our house to this day. We get two different sets of papers delivered, but one for the quality and supporting journalism and quality journalism, but two for the tactile, physical, for that luxury of I'm fully focused and present on what I'm with. And I love that. It's beautiful that the tap room is the same, intent with your vision.
And I think that, I don't know, it's so much of our daily life is ruled by what goes on in this little box.
Yes.
Whether it's the calendar or the email or the text messages or social media or the, everything flows through this device. It certainly has, made a lot of aspects of life more convenient. But at the same time, I cannot tell you the number of times that I have sat in the tap room and just plopped down next to some complete stranger and just shot the breeze about the beer. And then, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm not from here. Oh, well, I'm giving, and then you're giving restaurant recommendations and you're, how's the traffic between here and the Hermitage? That's information that, somebody walks away and says, oh, wow, what a nice place. And they'll go home and be like, wow, Nashville was so nice. There's such nice people. But maybe you would never get that if you're just sitting there, whatever. You could get that same information out of your phone, right? You could just Google it.
It's so interesting. I'm finding the exact same in my world, and it's fresh on my mind because I have a new listing over in 12 South, and I've been doing open houses every other weekend. And open houses in real estate are like old school, right? Like a lot of people are like, I don't want to do it. I don't know people. They just come and mess up my house. Like they're not serious people. This particular house, of the 3 opens I've done, every single time, and 2 of them, 2 times, I've had that exact experience where someone walked in that I wasn't expecting. And because we were set up and we were open to it and we drove it, we turned into real relationships. And I mean, I had a stranger walk in yesterday. She was 30 minutes early because they're typically 2 to 4. And she walked in at 1:30, and I didn't have signs out because I don't care when you show up. Like, please come in. And in the first 90 seconds, we had 6 things in common. That we had a child that goes to Tennessee. We both had lost a parent recently. She's moving and dealing with, aging parents and relocation, and she's building a house, and she knows this. And well, we just built this, house. And all of a sudden, like there was this massive connectivity, and round trip, the whole interaction was under 12 minutes while she toured the house too. But we are fast friends. We know what they're doing, and she's going to be a client in the next few years. She's already reached back out and been like, hey, I know you're local, and can you help me with a housekeeper for my daughter who's in this apartment building? And I'm like, absolutely. And we need to do that more. We are human, right? We're not machines. Right. Yes. As much as these machines and apps want us to be machines. That is luxury of having the time to be present and to be able to engage and to connect with people and deepen relationships.
Right. That's right. And, and I think, to bring it back around to what we do, like that beer's a part of that. Beer is a social beverage, I think, more than other alcoholic beverages are, maybe more than spirits, I would say. Wine, I think, also has this very collegial vibe to it, but wine also, craft beer is now fighting the same battle. I think for a long time, wine had that sort of pinky up mentality where it's like, oh, well, wine was gate kept. That's really what it was, right? Is that you have a sommelier who is the keeper of all great knowledge about wine. And then there became so much wine that the way that people were making purchasing decisions about wine was about what the label said or what it looked like. Excuse my language, but I remember buying a bottle of wine that was that was called Fat Bastard. and I bought it because that's what the label said. And I don't know whether the wine was good or not. I'm not a wine aficionado, but I bought it because it had a, I don't know, hedgehog or something on it. And I thought it was funny. And so I bought it because I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And the danger with craft beer is that craft beer becomes gate kept. And I think that it's so critically important that we as a beer community don't do that. We need to continue to bring people in and not bring people in with gimmicks and tricks and or exclusively events. The only reason we're getting people into our tap room is because on Monday we do trivia, and Tuesday we do karaoke, and Wednesday we do pig wrestling, and you know what I mean? If that is the only reason that people are coming, well, if you stop doing that, then they don't come anymore. Like that is the beauty of beers, that beer is a social beverage. And so, I want people to come to be able to hang out and meet each other and learn from one another and, make new friends. Like this can be a lonely existence.
No doubt.
If we can provide a little space where people can make friends and hang out with their friends, then I think we've done right.
No doubt. So with all this passion around your craft and you've got to have experienced an amazing luxury experience that someone just really showed out and got some attention. What's something like that you've encountered in your career?
It's funny. I was thinking about this morning and kind of how I would define luxury in general and what that experience would be. And I think for a long time, I really thought about luxury as attaining something that is unattainable, right? Like having, like I was driving in the car. Well, I was in the brewery van, right? Which is, as you can imagine, it's like a 2001 rattle trap Econoline with 400,000 miles on it, and I'm at the intersection that we like to call. It's got an
amazing aroma, I imagine.
Listen, you should be so lucky as to smell the inside of the brewery van. But we're sitting at the intersection that I call the Triangle of Death. Which is on Thompson Lane, right in front of that Wendy's.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're sitting there, and it was a nice day. And my business partner and I are in the van together. It's a nice day. The windows are down because the air conditioning doesn't work in the van. And so we hear this rumble, and his car pulls up next to us, and we're looking out the window at it. And the windows are tinted, but you kind of see in, and it looks like, like lots of blonde hair. And I see the hand on the steering wheel's got a lot of rings on it. And I was like, I've never seen a car like that before. What is that? And John's like, that's a Bugatti. And I was like, I've never even heard that word before. What is that? And he's like, that's probably $1 million vehicle. Like, that's a very expensive car. I'm like, who the heck is that? Well, it was Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman.
Yep.
Driving, whatever, just driving their Bugatti around. So like that is an unattainable thing for most folks, to be driving around in a Bugatti. And so to tie that to luxury makes natural sense, right? It's kind of an unattainable thing. But I think like if I want to treat myself or have what I would consider to be a luxurious experience, I mean, that might be when we get off this phone call that I go sit in a lawn chair in my yard by myself for 20 minutes and just listen to the birds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, when I think about sort of that kind of luxurious or luxury focused experience, it's going to sound a little bit backward. That's why I wanted to kind of bring that around. But I've got our best account in East Tennessee is in Townsend, and it's called the Townsend Abbey. And so our branding looks very similar. We're not We're not affiliated at all, except that we're great friends, and they sell a lot of our beer. And Steve and Janice, who own the Abbey, also own a couple of different things down there in Townsend, but they own the Little River Campground. And it's a campground where you can tent camp or you can RV camp, or they've got these little, like 6 little fishing cottages. And so during the winter, like this time of the year, leading up through the fall, the fishing cottages are very busy, but in the winter, they're very much not. And so when I go to town, I call on Knoxville about once a month. And so when I go to town during their off season, he lets me stay there.
Nice.
To call it luxurious is not, I think, what most people would think of as luxury. Like it's pretty Spartan. And yeah, I mean, the kitchen has a sink and a coffee pot and a little refrigerator, but it's got a little screened in porch that looks down into the Little River. And if I go down out there and I go to work, the trade, and then I drive down into Townsend where it's perfectly quiet, and I sit on that little back porch, and I don't have to do anything. I can just leave my phone inside, and I can just sit on that porch, and I can listen to the river. That is my luxurious experience for you.
I love that. Luxury is local, right? I mean, just that. I'm visualizing exactly what that is. I've been there. I know that. I mean, haven't been to that one, but I know exactly what you mean, with the Little Pigeon River rolling through it, coming out of the backside of Knoxville. And it's all relative. Time is one of our biggest commodities that no one at any level can get any more of it. And so luxury ends up being more about but it's also highly personal, having that. It's luxurious to get away from all those notifications and this computer we carry in our pocket, but also, it can vary. It could be not having to do anything, just being able to be there and think.
Yeah. My years ago, I used to wear an Apple Watch, and like I thought about it a lot, and it, it's always buzzing and vibrating and, whatever on your wrist. And then it stopped working. And, it was, I don't know, my wife was like, do you want another one? I was like, honestly, I don't, because I feel like it made me think about like I was on parole, like it was like a prison bracelet.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. And so it was handy. I liked being able to look at it and see what the temperature was outside, or what time it was. But other than that, I don't even wear a watch anymore. Like, why? I have this one in my pocket that I carry around with me, so I just don't wear one.
For sure. It has become a different, I'm a watch guy. I'm into watches, but I carry a digital one because my doctor told me I should, because a friend was like, you get to track all these things. And I'm like, cool, that's an easy choice to keep up with it, to show that I'm healthy, versus, someone thinking that I might not be. But I'm with you. I love the watches, but gets to be too much. Sometimes it's luxury. Look, I mean, it's a luxury to not have a bow tie on. The bow tie is my brand. I love it, but it's you and it's me. And like, we're having a good, fun conversation today. And I'm like, hey, we're going to have a luxury of this. Also, I look at podcasts and I'm like, I love working and listening to podcasts or walking or what have you, as opposed to watching. Watching has come around in 2025, which is why we're dual platform now. But it's just so interesting. I'm totally with you. A good friend of mine that you haven't met yet, he has the most basic Fitbit ever, and it tracks his sleep and his oxygen, all these other things, his health stuff, but it doesn't get any of the others. He went super, super high tech, and he's a tech guy, but he actually went way back in tech. He's like, I don't want all that. I want, just a few.
And, and again, to sort of tie it back to beer and Black Abbey, I think that from a luxury standpoint, when we lived in Connecticut, we lived in this duplex, and it was a house, and we had the downstairs and there was somebody else upstairs. And the guy who lived upstairs, I don't know what his job was. I have no idea, but he had a 9-to-5 job. And when he would come home, we shared a little parking lot in the back of the house, and so he'd park back there, and he'd open the trunk of his car, and there was always a cooler in the trunk of his car that was full of Coors Light cans. And he'd pull out his lawn chair, and he'd sit in that little square of lawn back there, and he'd drink him a Coors Light, like ice cold. And for that guy, that was his luxury experience. Like, I personally, I don't enjoy Coors Light, so I don't ever really drink it. But sometimes I drink Budweiser, and I like Budweiser just fine. And, there's a time and a place for everything. I'm not saying this to kind of, poo-poo Budweiser, but not many people would say, oh, Budweiser is a luxury beverage, right? It's ubiquitous. You can find it anywhere. But you can have a luxury experience drinking Budweiser because of what mindset you find yourself in. And I think for beer, the craft movement, can straddle both categories, right? Craft can be available in grocery stores where you can just buy it and drink it whenever, a beer for any occasion, or craft can be rare and allocated and specialty and can fit that definition of luxury as well.
Well, and to your point, like having that was that guy's moment, right? That guy's luxury. And to this, we've talked about it, you've got to balance, being able this luxury experience of, exclusivity and availability, right? Because something that is not available, that guy might have only, who knows why Coors became in his journey, but there's an interesting balance to availability and is this exclusive enough because it's available in the in the Quickie Mart, or
Right.
Kroger or Publix.
Yes. Like I love chartreuse. I love chartreuse. And for a long time, I call on bars and liquor stores, is what I do. So for a long time, I would just, if I needed some, I'd be at Frugal McDougal and I'd pick up a bottle. And then all of a sudden you couldn't get it. And it's made by Carthusian monks. And who have taken a vow of silence. It's separate monasteries. There's 3 facilities. One makes one piece, one makes another piece, and the third one blends it. So there's no one person who knows what the recipe is. It's that secret, but they've taken a vow of silence. So they can't even talk to each other. It's insane. Anyway, but then you couldn't get it. And the word that came out of Belgium was, oh, well, the monks feel like they're spending too much of their energy on production and not enough of their energy on prayer, so they're backing it off. And then the price went way up and nobody could get it anymore. I was like, well, I mean, even the monks understand basic principles of economics.
Yeah.
Supply and demand, there's less of it, you could charge more, but it's now well to find. Really like it and try to seek it out when I can. But I also like I would drink chartreuse. I would make oh gosh, I'm never going to be able to remember the name of the cocktail, but it's like part chartreuse, part gin, and then lime juice. And you shake it and pour it in a martini glass. Just check it out. It's delicious.
Yeah, for sure.
But I would drink that, if I had to order a cocktail, that's what I would order. But I can't anymore because the chartreuse is so expensive that I'm like, you just ordered a $25 cocktail, pal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You're like, wait a minute, hold on. Let's rethink. There may be another one.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll just stick with maybe I'll stick with a Coors Light like my neighbor.
Yeah. Listen, again, that was his, right?
Right.
I'll never forget my dad's luxury, being of the era that he was. I knew this growing up, that he went for 3 years with a small, 2 years in Southeast Asia and Vietnam, he didn't get a cold Coke in a glass with ice. And for the rest of his life after that, like that was his thing, was a Coke in a glass with ice, as cold as it could get. And that's the best of the best. And, I don't take flowers, to his graveside. I take a Coke in a glass with ice. And, that's our, showing and giving that luxury. But it's just interesting how it all comes about. Because some people, really want that exclusivity and that I found it and I've got it and no one else has it. And then others like, man, I'm not working that hard. Like, is it in the beer aisle, at the grocery? So. Interesting. Okay, so let's shift into some psychology and consumer kind of driven behavior. What do you do when you're educating around some of the price points that some people can think is it's crazy to spend $14 on a 6-pack?
I would say twice a year I do a beer class at the Total Wine in Brentwood. And they do it, I would say, weekly. I think they have classes going in there. They're mostly run by staff, but oftentimes, I don't know how, but they oftentimes bring in vendors for wine and spirits and beer. And so I very much talk about this in that class because I think it's important to know that when you're buying a craft beer, and this is Black Abbey's slogan, but I think it applies to most every craft brewery, is that beer is created, not made. It's not just stamped out at a factory somewhere like a license plate.
Mm-hmm.
And there commands a higher price. Part of that is because of economy of scale. We're distributed mostly across the state by Budweiser distributors. So I'm very familiar with the Anheuser-Busch methodology of how they work. And they have 12 breweries around the country that are gigantic. And so their economies of scale, whether that is for raw materials that produce the beer or raw materials that go into the packaging or transport or storage or cooperage or any of that stuff, they realize great savings on that because of how large they are. And then you've got folks that are more our size that stuff costs more because we buy less. Stuff costs more because when I ship beer to Memphis, I have to use LTL freight. I'm not shipping a full truckload of beer to Memphis. We're just not that big, you know? So there are economies of scale that drive price. But then there's also economies of craft that drive price. You would expect if you go to Creve Hall Bagel that those bagels will probably cost a little bit more than if you go to Brugger's.
Absolutely.
Right? For those who are watching this and don't know what Brugger's Bagel is, like I just revealed my New York or Au Bon Pain, you know, that's part of how we talk about it. And then I think also the variety within the craft beer spectrum. You know, for the most part, Black Abbey makes beer that come in 16-ounce or come in 12-ounce six-packs, right? And the 12-ounce six-packs, if you go to the grocery store, they are all sitting on the shelf and they all cost the same. But then we also do higher-end things. We do 4 barrel-aged beers a year, and so one a quarter. And those beers sit in typically whiskey barrels for, like, they get brewed and then aged for about a year before they get packaged. So the cost of that is high, right? That's inventory, beer in process. You know, barrels are expensive, the packaging is, you know, and then so that costs more, but it's also more rare. And so I talk a lot about IPA. You know, IPA, India Pale Ale, is the number one selling category for craft beer, and therefore IPAs are typically more expensive than other beers. And the reason for that is not just because they're popular; it's also because they use a lot of hops, and hops are expensive. Especially the kind of IPAs that are very trendy right now, which is like the hazy IPA or the New England style IPAs. They might use 6 to 8x more hops than your West Coast IPA, even though the West Coast IPA is more bitter. It's the pricing is a little bit about economics and a little bit about availability, and then a little bit of, like, you know, like I said, the economics of craft. You know, like small business versus big business.
Tell us, you mentioned your one that gets aged in the barrels. Tell us how you're balancing some of the tradition versus innovation, you know, today.
So beer, I mean, that was how beer was produced and aged and stored, was in wooden barrels for generations. The advent of stainless steel for use in liquid and food production, before that it was wood. So it's a very traditional method, aging beer in barrels. And then as far as balancing how you, like, what you do with it, how you sell it, I think is more interesting to me. The technique of brewing, like, you make the same beer. Typically you make the beer finish sweeter because oak carries natural tannins that will make the beer taste more dry. So you want the beer to finish sweeter so that it can stand up to the components of oak. And then we keep all of our barrels cold during that aging process, because unlike whiskey, like, you put whiskey in the barrels and you want them to get hot and cold. The whiskey moving in and out of the oak staves is what gives it its character and uniqueness. With beer, if it moves in and out of those staves, it can acquire flavor and aroma profiles that are not desirable in beer. And so we keep all of our barrels at constant temperature throughout their aging process, and that minimizes that. So it takes longer for the beer to be finished, but it also makes it less tannic, which I think makes it taste better. But balancing, you know, Black Abbey's sort of general guidepost is European influenced American craft. That's the framework within which we work. And so we make mostly European style beers, and barrel aging is a very traditional European process. And so we like to incorporate that into how we work. And for the most part, the beers that we're putting into barrels they're either Belgian, English, or German baseline style. So the one that we have in market right now is a Belgian style triple that was aged in barrels that came from Blue Note Distillery out of Memphis. And then the next one to come, and that'll drop right before Thanksgiving, is a German style Bock. So it's a dark lager, also aged in Blue Note barrels. But we like to try to stay in that European category, whether we're aging in barrels or not. I think that's an interesting balance to try to strike. Not so much the barrel aging, but like knowing who you are and being that.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, we are a European influenced brewery, and so that is what we really try to focus on.
So good. Well said. We got 2 final questions. as we near our time together, but what's a luxury experience or item that you think everyone should experience at least once?
Man, I talked about it before, but I'm here to tell you, chartreuse is where it's at. You got to try it. It's hard to find. Apparently there's a chartreuse bar in the DC area. My wife's family is out there, and I've already been communicating with my brothers-in-law that when we go out there for the holidays, hey, we need to go to this place because like I'm all about the green and yellow.
You gonna be bringing a few cases home?
I mean, we'll see if I could get my hands on it. When we find it out there, I'm going to buy it because it doesn't last long. But yeah, I would 100% recommend people to check out chartreuse. It is now an allocated product. It's not just going to be on the shelf at every liquor store. And it also, like, my first boss out of college, I worked at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan. The rector of the cathedral, Monsignor Anthony Dallavilla was his name. And he used to like chartreuse. He turned me on to it. And he said, it'll put hair on your hair. So it's strong. It's no joke. You should check it out. It's an interesting flavor. It's the only liquor that has a color named for it. The liquor came first.
No kidding. How about that?
So yeah, if you could find it, I prefer the green over the yellow, but there's two varietals that are available in the United States, green and yellow. The yellow is a little less alcohol strong, and the green is a little more syrupy sweet.
That's funny. I didn't know that about as long as we've been friends. I didn't know about that at St. Patrick's. We stayed just behind that, right behind St. Patrick's 2 years ago when we were in New York. So,
yep, that was my first job out of college.
Wow.
I did fundraising for them for capital restoration of the building.
Well, it looks good. Good job.
Yeah,
well, in your book of life, this is our last question, and then we'll have your parting comments. But in your book of life, what's your current chapter and what's it called?
Yeah, I would say it's the chapter. The chapter would be called "The Ends Before the Beginning," Part 2. I've got 3 kids. My oldest is she's a junior at University of Tennessee, but my middle child is now a senior in high school, and so we're very much in the season of the last cross country meet and the last homecoming and the last youth group retreat, and we're very much in the season of the lasts before the firsts.
Yes.
And so I think that feels like the chapter that we're in. I don't know, this is probably the hardest thing for somebody to do as an adult, is to try to figure out how to keep the balance between your home life and your work life and try to be present in both of those things in ways that's effective. Thinking about this question ahead of time, I thought I want to make sure that I answer this focused on what's going on in my home life, because I think that has to be the number one priority. It can't just be brewery all the time. And so, but yeah, I think that's what I would probably call it. It's like, the season of lasts before the season of firsts. I think when we went through that with Maggie, that it all happened so fast and we didn't know we almost didn't know it was happening until it was over. And then we're like, well, crap, that was just over. And so I'm trying to be much more aware of it with Will, to like celebrate it and be a part of it and be present for it. Like, I don't know, like I got to go, he's got a cross country meet Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. I can't remember, but maybe he was going to be running at 5:30 and then it changed to 4 and then it might be 6. And I was like,
yeah, brother, I'm on that journey with you, as you know, and I bookend your family with a senior in Knoxville and an 11-year-old, and so I just default to that's the first thing that goes in the schedule. That whatever they're doing or where we need to be with them, that goes in there first. And it's a battle every day. It's a battle every day, but that's a luxury, to be able to be like, what, I'm going to choose this, not that I've got to be at this 8 to 5, I'll make up that gap, 2 hours on Saturday or 2 hours on Sunday, or I'll have someone else do it. They may not do it as good as I do, but they'll do it 80% as good, and I'll get to be where I want to be,
right.
So I get that.
Yep.
What did we not hit on, or anything you care to share as we wrap up? Or
well, like I was saying, I say this at the end of all those Total Wine classes that I do, and I think that it's an important thing to talk about. Just remember that local businesses are your neighbors, and they're out there contributing to the local community, and economically, it's important to participate in the local economy means supporting local vendors. And sometimes that means, you're buying something that might cost a little more, but it's putting the money right back into your local neighborhood. And I think that that's really important to think about. There's a lot of outstanding stuff that is coming from all over the world that is available to all of us, whether it be through ordering it, having it sent to you, or buying it from specialty places locally. I would just encourage people to support their local, support the local economy, because that then supports the city that we live in. And I think that that's important to do.
So good. And so actually impactful, dollars going back into the community that you're working to influence,
That's right. Yes. I mean, it's whatever. If you want to go to McDonald's and eat a quarter pounder, like that is a franchise, right? So there are local folks that are working at that McDonald's, and it's a local franchise owner that owns that building, but they're also paying fees back to the corporate entity that licenses the brand and the recipe and all that stuff. If right there on 8th Avenue, you go next door to Fat Mo's. Well, I mean, Fat Mo might be serving you that burger. And then Fat Mo's going to take that money and he's going to go spend it back right here in our town. I don't know if Fat Mo is a real guy.
He is.
I assume.
No,
okay.
He is. He absolutely is. Brothers Burgers, right? Brothers, you're going to get a better product at Brothers,
that's right.
And better experience. And they're going to walk in next time and go, "Hey, Carl, how you doing?" So yeah, there's balance to all those things, so maybe McDonald's is good for that migraine hack on the extra cold Coke and the French fries, the salt and the.
I just, and again, I just like, I'm not trying to,
yes,
poo McDonald's,
yes,
but I do think it's important.
We've all
support your local
there.
guys. Yeah.
Well, listen, if anyone wanted to connect with you, what's your favorite platform and messaging, and where would you like them to connect with you?
Sure. The best place to find me is on Instagram. You can find the brewery there at Black Abbey Brew. You can find me at Black Abbey Carl. And that drives everything else. If you post on Instagram, it feeds it to Facebook. And those are the two primary things that we use to communicate out there. So you can find me at Black Abbey Carl on Instagram.
There you go. Thanks for being here, man. It's amazing.
Of course. No problem. Thanks for inviting me. Really appreciate it. I feel more luxurious now than I did this morning.
Let's talk luxury. That's why we're here.
Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Luxury. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow, rate, and share this with someone you know that would like to know more about the finer things in luxury and how things are done differently. I'm Alex, and I'll catch you next time as we keep defining what luxury really means.